Welcome back to our channel, where we honor the lives of those who left us too soon. In this heartbreaking tribute, we remember the American female celebrities who tragically passed away due to complications from surgery. Their talent, beauty, and influence left a lasting mark on the world. But fate had other plans. Join us as we pay homage to their lives, legacies, and the dreams they left behind. Mary Wickes, a legendary character actress known for her quick wit and sharp comedic timing, left an indelible mark on Hollywood before her tragic passing at the age of 85. She was born Mary Isabella Wickenhauser on June 13, 1910, in University City, Missouri. And from a young age, she displayed an intelligence and humor that would later define her career. Though she initially planned to become a lawyer, the pull of the stage was too strong, and she soon found herself immersed in the world of acting. Over decades, she became a familiar face in film and television, often portraying stern but lovable characters, nurses, nuns, teachers, and housekeepers, who never hesitated to deliver a perfectly timed, sarcastic remark. She appeared in classics like White Christmas, The Man Who Came to Dinner, The Music Man, and Sister Act, where her comedic brilliance shined through. Despite her enduring career, her final years were marked by suffering. Health issues plagued her, and she eventually suffered a devastating fall that resulted in a broken hip. It was a cruel turn of fate for someone who had brought so much joy to audiences. After undergoing surgery, complications arose, and on October 22, 1995, she passed away at UCLA Medical Center. It was a heartbreaking end for a woman whose presence had been larger than life. In one of her final roles, she lent her voice to Laverne, the wisecracking gargoyle in Disney's The Hunchback of Notre Dame, though she tragically died before completing all her lines. Even in her last moments on screen, she brought laughter and warmth to audiences, just as she had done throughout her life. Mary Wickes never married, nor did she have children, but she left behind a legacy of unforgettable performances that continue to entertain and inspire. Her impact was recognized posthumously when she was inducted into the St. Louis Walk of Fame, and her generosity continued beyond her death through a multi-million-dollar bequest supporting the arts. She may be gone, but her voice, her presence, and the laughter she brought to the world remain timeless. Helen Chandler, a once radiant star of Hollywood's golden age, known best for her hauntingly delicate performance as Mina Seward in the 1931 horror classic Dracula, lived a life that began with brilliance but ended in heartbreaking obscurity. Born in the early 1900s, though the exact date remains uncertain, she was a child of the stage, pushed into the limelight by an overbearing mother who saw her not as a daughter, but as a means to an end. By the time she reached Hollywood, she had already conquered Broadway, acting alongside legends like John and Lionel Barrymore. Her talent undeniable, her presence ethereal. She was praised for her fragility, her porcelain-like beauty, and her ability to embody sorrow on screen. But behind the camera, that sorrow was all too real. By the late 1930s, as Hollywood shifted toward a new era, Helen's career began to fade, and with it, so did her spirit. She turned to alcohol, a crutch that would soon consume her, leading to years of struggles, hospitalizations, and desperate attempts to reclaim what she had lost. In 1950, her addiction led to a horrific accident. She fell asleep while smoking, setting her apartment ablaze, suffering devastating burns that forever scarred her once enchanting face. The world that once adored her had moved on, and Helen, now broken in ways both visible and unseen, withdrew from the public eye. Her final years were spent in and out of institutions, battling demons that never loosened their grip, relying on the kindness of the Motion Picture Relief Fund to survive. The pain never truly left her, and on April 30th, 1965, at just 59 years old, she died following complications from surgery in Hollywood, California. Her death, another silent tragedy in an industry that had long forgotten her. Her remains were cremated, tucked away in obscurity until 2023, when, thanks to devoted fans and researchers, her ashes were finally given a resting place worthy of her legacy at Hollywood Forever Cemetery. Helen Chandler was never meant to be a footnote in history. She was luminous, a soul yearning for love and stability that never came. She was the epitome of the fleeting nature of fame, a reminder of how the industry chews up its brightest stars and leaves them to fade into darkness. Yet, in every frame of Dracula, in every whisper of her voice on Lux Radio, she still lives, a fragile yet unforgettable echo of a Hollywood that no longer exists. Joan Rivers, a trailblazing comedian and television icon, was known for her razor-sharp wit and fearless humor, but her final days were marked by tragedy. On August 28, 2014, what was supposed to be a routine throat procedure at an outpatient clinic in Manhattan turned into a nightmare when she stopped breathing during the surgery. She was rushed to Mount Sinai Hospital, where she was placed on life support, but she never regained consciousness. After days of hope and uncertainty, her daughter Melissa Rivers faced the heartbreaking decision to let her go. On September 4, Joan Rivers passed away at the age of 81 due to brain damage caused by a lack of oxygen. Investigations later revealed a series of shocking medical failures, including the clinic's failure to monitor her deteriorating vital signs, an unauthorized biopsy performed without her consent, and possible errors in anesthesia administration. Her death was not just a loss to comedy, but a devastating reminder of medical negligence. Joan Rivers wasn't just a comedian, she was a pioneer, a woman who broke barriers in a male-dominated industry. Born Joan Alexandra Malinsky on June 8, 1933, in Brooklyn, New York, to Russian Jewish immigrants, she was an intelligent and ambitious child who faced insecurities about her weight and appearance, struggles that would later fuel her brutally honest comedic style. She started performing stand-up in the 1960s, hustling through the comedy club scene alongside legends like George Carlin and Richard Pryor. Her big break came in 1965 when she appeared on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, who saw her potential and championed her career. But Hollywood can be brutal, and after Carson turned his back on her for launching her own late-night show, Rivers faced one of her darkest periods. In 1987, after the cancellation of her show, her husband, Edgar Rosenberg, tragically took his own life. Left to rebuild from the wreckage, she fought her way back, reinventing herself as a red carpet queen, a best-selling author, and the biting voice of fashion police. Her career, spanning over 5 decades, was filled with accolades, including an Emmy, a Grammy, and a Tony nomination. But beyond the awards, she was a mother, a grandmother, and a woman who lived unapologetically on her own terms. Her funeral, attended by celebrities and close friends, was a grand tribute to the life she lived, bold, unfiltered, and unforgettable. Howard Stern delivered a eulogy fitting of her legacy, calling her a trailblazer who never backed down. Even in death, Joan Rivers left behind a legacy of laughter, resilience, and a reminder that comedy is sometimes the best way to face life's harshest realities. Ruth Hussey, a remarkable actress known for her sharp wit and elegance, left an unforgettable mark on Hollywood. But her final days were shadowed by complications from an appendectomy that tragically led to her passing on April 19, 2005, at the age of 93. Her son, John Longenecker, shared that she passed away at Mary Health of the Sick Convalescent Home in Newbury Park, California. Despite the sorrow, she found ways to bring humor even in her struggles, often telling her family she had Chollery marbles, a playful term her mother had coined for any ailment. Ruth had lived a long, fulfilling life, but in the end, even her resilience couldn't shield her from the silent dangers of a routine medical procedure that turned fatal. She was born in Providence, Rhode Island, on October 30, 1911, and from an early age, she faced hardships, losing her father to the Spanish flu when she was just 7. But despite the pain, she pushed forward, studying at Pembroke College and the University of Michigan before making her way into acting. At first, she was just a model and a radio fashion commentator, but a fateful audition in New York opened doors she never thought possible. MGM saw her potential, and soon, she was gracing the screen with Hollywood's biggest names. Her breakout moment came in 1940, when she played Elizabeth Embry, the quick-witted photographer in The Philadelphia Story, a performance that earned her an Academy Award nomination. She held her own against legends like Katharine Hepburn, Cary Grant, and James Stewart, proving that her talent was undeniable. Over the years, she became known for her sophisticated and intelligent portrayals, starring in films like Flight Command, Northwest Passage, The Uninvited, and The Great Gatsby. But as time passed, she chose to step away from the limelight, focusing on her family and personal passions, like painting and charity work. Though she left Hollywood behind, she remained beloved, and her impact on classic cinema never faded. Then, in her 90s, she underwent an appendectomy, what should have been a straightforward surgery. But complications arose, and she never fully recovered. Her passing was a devastating loss, not just for her family, but for an industry that had long admired her grace and talent. Ruth Hussey lived a life full of achievement and perseverance, a woman who once stood alongside Hollywood's elite, and yet remained humble, kind, and full of life. In the end, she left behind more than just films. She left a legacy of strength, elegance, and quiet resilience that will never be forgotten. Joan Rivers, born Eleanor Dorothy Lovegren on March 25, 1916, was an American actress best remembered for playing Dale Arden in the legendary Flash Garden serials of the 1930s, captivating audiences with her beauty, charm, and talent. But behind the bright lights of Hollywood, her life took a quieter turn in later years, leading to a tragic end on February 24, 1991. Jean had once been the epitome of adventure on screen, battling villains and facing danger alongside Flash Garden. But in reality, her final days were marked by a far different struggle, one she couldn't escape. She passed away following complications from surgery, a stark contrast to the fearless, invincible image she had embodied in her films. The surgery, meant to help her, instead led to unforeseen complications that ultimately took her life, leaving behind a legacy of classic cinema and memories of a time when she reigned as one of the most beloved heroines of early Hollywood. Her death came as a quiet, almost forgotten moment in contrast to the thrilling world she had once inhabited on screen. Born in Belmont, Massachusetts, she had dreams of being an artist, but fate had other plans when a beauty contest won her a ticket to Hollywood. From the mid-1930s, she became a staple of adventure serials, starring in Flash Garden, Ace Drummond, and the adventures of Frank Merriwell, among others. Her chemistry with Buster Crabbe and her role as Dale Arden made her an icon of the sci-fi genre. But Hollywood, as it often does, failed to reward her talent with lasting stardom. Seeking more serious roles, she moved to feature films, appearing alongside John Wayne, Boris Karloff, and Tyrone Power. But the big breakout role never came. By the 1950s, her career had faded, and she stepped away from the limelight, choosing a life of quiet obscurity. Despite the glamour of her youth, her later years were far removed from the golden era she had once graced. She married Dan Winkler in 1943, and after his death in 1970, she largely lived away from public attention. Then, in 1991, what should have been a routine medical procedure became the final chapter of her story. She died at the age of 74. Her contributions to cinema are remembered by those who cherished the serials of old, but her name largely forgotten by the mainstream. A woman who had once been at the heart of intergalactic battles, who had survived explosions and daring rescues on film, ultimately succumbed to the fragility of human life. Her ashes were returned to her family, a quiet farewell for a woman who had once lived in the thrilling world of Saturday matinee serials. Though time has moved on, her legacy endures in the hearts of classic film lovers who still see her as the brave and beautiful Dale Arden, forever trapped in an era of adventure, fighting against the odds, just as she did in life. Jane Randolph, a name etched in the golden era of Hollywood, became immortal through her chilling performances in classic horror and noir films. Born on October 30th, 1914, in Youngstown, Ohio, she was raised in Kokomo, Indiana, where her love for golf and flying shaped her adventurous spirit. Her dreams led her to Hollywood in 1939, where she struggled before landing a contract with Warner Bros., later moving to RKO, where she found her breakthrough. But it wasn't the glitz and glamour of Hollywood that defined the final chapter of her life. It was the quiet solitude of her later years, ending in an unexpected tragedy. On May 4, 2009, Jane Randolph passed away at the age of 94 in Gstaad, Switzerland, from complications following a broken hip. What should have been a recoverable injury spiraled into something fatal, a cruel reminder of the frailty of age. In her final days, she was far from the flashing cameras and the world that once adored her, spending her twilight years between Los Angeles and Switzerland, where she had settled after retiring from acting. Once a vibrant actress who lit up the screen with her sharp performances, Jane found herself battling the limitations of time. The same woman who once portrayed fearless, independent women on screen now faced a slow, painful decline. The broken hip left her immobile, and the complications that followed proved too much for her aging body. The quiet dignity with which she lived her final years was a stark contrast to the eerie, suspenseful scenes that defined her film legacy. Hollywood remembered her for roles that played on fear, her footsteps echoing through deserted streets, the terror in her eyes as she swam alone, sensing something lurking in the shadows. She was the first pin-up girl for Yank, the US Army magazine, a femme fatale in noir classics, and a victim of unseen horrors in Val Lewton's legendary thrillers. Her most famous role in Cat People, 1942, saw her embody Alice Moore, the intelligent, confident woman whose fear became the audience's fear. But beyond the celluloid nightmares, Jane lived a full life, one that took her from Hollywood's spotlight to the lavish social circles of Spain, where she married businessman Jamie Del Amo and left the industry behind. When he passed away, she drifted between Los Angeles and Europe, a woman whose life had taken her through decades of cinematic history, only to end in the silence of an unexpected medical complication. There were no dramatic farewells, no grand tributes as she faded away in a distant land. But her legacy, much like the haunting scenes she once inhabited, lingers. Eartha Kitt was a force of nature, a singer, actress, and activist whose voice could purr or roar, captivating audiences for decades. But behind the glamour and the fame, she carried a life of hardship, resilience, and an untamed spirit that refused to be silenced, even in her final moments. Born on January 17, 1927, in North, South Carolina, to a mother of African American and Cherokee descent and a white father she never knew. Her early years were marked by rejection and cruelty, shunned for her pale skin, abused by those who should have protected her. But it wasn't just her talent that defined her. It was her unyielding defiance in 1968. At a White House luncheon, she dared to speak against the Vietnam War, a moment that led to her being blacklisted in the US for years. Yet she fought back, rebuilding her career on her own terms, mesmerizing audiences on Broadway, in jazz clubs, and later as the unforgettable voice of Isma in The Emperor's New Groove, proving that reinvention was in her blood. But life, no matter how fiercely lived, must end. And for Eartha, it came on December 25, 2008. Yet even in her last days, she did not fade away gently. Her daughter, Kit Shapiro, described how her mother, true to her nature, left this world screaming at the top of her lungs, a testament to the sheer force of will that had driven her throughout her life, fighting until the very last breath. Eartha Kitt was never one to go quietly. She was a woman who lived unapologetically, challenged the world, and left an imprint so deep that even death could not silence her legacy. Though they are no longer with us, their memories live on. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe as we continue to honor those who shaped history but left us too soon.